Now that I'm 32, I wake up every day to a vibrant garden that I've created. My grandmother's final gift to me was a small, cozy home surrounded by flowers and foliage. This location is more than just a plot of land with a structure. It's a monument to the battle I've fought against my own blood since I was a child. Being the proprietor of the neighborhood eatery was more than just a job for our family. It was an inherited identity, much like a holy torch. Mike, my brother, embraced it like a fish in water. My parents and Mike said I was the odd one out. The black sheep has her head in the ground. Literally. They would scoff at the phrase gardener as if it left a bad taste in their mouth. Dinner conversations were a minefield. Eva, you look stunning at the dinner table. Dirt underneath your nails? That's not correct, my father would complain, his displeasure as heavy as the palm on the back of my seat. Mom would nod, her gaze shifting from mine to Mike's neatly groomed hands. Eva, he is right. You're no longer a child. It's time to stop playing in the mud and think about your future in the restaurant. Grandma was the only person who understood, the only person who saw the dirt under my nails as a badge of honor rather than a sign of disobedience. She was my safe haven during the storm. She would interject, "Let the girl be." Despite my parents' growing disillusionment, her tone remained steady and firm. "Don't you see she has a gift? This isn't just dirt," she'd say, waving her hand across the garden. "This is life. This is passion." Grandma first introduced me to the joys of gardening. She would converse with plants as if they were old friends, each with their own quirks and needs. I felt free and understood in her garden, where we spent hours together. She even took me to flower shows, where I was able to see the wonders that could be created with only dirt, seeds, and love. She would exclaim, "Look at this, Eva," pointing to a particularly beautiful display. "You could do even better at this. You possess both the heart and the vision for it." However, at home, Grandma's support was like a yell, overshadowed by a murmur. Mike and my parents assumed that my interest in gardening was just a phase that I would eventually outgrow. However, I was aware of it. It was where I belonged. The sensation of dirt between my fingers, the thrill of seeing something grow from nothing. I was planting some new plants I had chosen one day when Mike appeared, leaning against the doorframe with that particular expression. "Are you really going to continue doing this? Have fun, like a child in the dirt. When will you be sincere, Eva?" I remember looking up at him, rebellious, my face smeared with dirt. "This is serious, Mike, more than you will ever realize." He simply shook his head and left, leaving me to pursue my childhood interests. Their looks and remarks made it difficult for me to give up. It was a part of who I was, not merely a desire. And every flowering plant and altered plot of land I worked on was a silent victory. You quote, "To think I'd said I was moving to Mars." The day I told my family that instead of working in the family restaurant, I was going to start my own landscaping business, Mom's face turned red, like a ripe tomato. Dad, he simply seemed to have consumed something acidic. "What are you doing now?" Mom's hands were all over the place, like stray birds trying to flee. And her voice reached octaves I didn't know existed. I tried to remain composed. "As I previously stated, my goal is to become a landscape designer. It's what I enjoy doing and am good at." Dad gave the silverware a hard smack on the table. "Gardening. That's not my daughter's type of job. You should help manage the eatery." "This is absurd." Although it was unsurprising, their response still hurt Grandma. I stepped in at that point. Her soothing voice cut through the tense atmosphere. "Please pause for a moment. Eva clearly has a gift, and she is very passionate about it. Why not give her the opportunity to clarify?" I jotted down everything, including how it felt to have dirt under my nails. It was so satisfying to see something I had planted grow, and all of the ideas that were just waiting to be realized. I talked about the plants I wanted to try, the colors and textures, and the imaginary garden I'd made for Grandma's backyard. Grandma had a slight smile on her face as I noticed her nod. However, Mom and Dad appeared to be watching an unsubtitled foreign movie. Dad finally issued me a warning. "It is the door, or a restaurant," he stated, his voice as cold as ice. Grandma, God bless her. She grabbed my hand at that point and declared that she would stay with me. And that was it. The very next day, I moved in with her. Grandma's house served as a refuge. Every day, we dug, planted, and designed in our garden. She gave me advice, listened to my ideas, and together we created a space that reflected our individual spirits. She said to Eva, "You know you have something special." She was digging her hands into the ground one of those days. "Your affection for this will lead you somewhere." Then an incredible thing happened. Mrs. Henderson, Grandma's next-door neighbor, noticed us at work and asked if I could help her. A sad excuse for a garden. I jumped at the opportunity. I gave it my all because this was my first serious project. Something else happened when Mrs. Henderson's desolate plot was transformed into a vibrant, thriving sanctuary. She gave me $500 because she was so pleased. I couldn't believe my first payment for doing what I loved. Grandma proudly replied, "I quote V told you." Her eyes glistened. "You'll make a name for yourself." We decided to celebrate alone at the neighborhood cafe. Despite the small size of the gathering, the atmosphere was that of a victory party. We discussed our next major project, the focal point of her garden, while enjoying coffee and cake for your first job, Granny said, raising her coffee cup in celebration. To many more, I replied, feeling lighter than I had in a long time after my family's expectations. As I lay in my former room at Grandma's that night, I realized this was only the beginning. For the first time in my life, I felt as if I was finally where I was supposed to be, even if the road ahead was unknown and frightening. It was like visiting another planet to pursue a career in landscape design. After moving to the city, I felt more fulfilled than ever as I soaked up all the beauty and wisdom I could. Grandma was my rock through everything. Whether I was at home for the holidays or we were just catching up on the phone, we would talk for hours. She was always interested in hearing about my studies, projects, and new plants. I couldn't stop talking about it. But what about Mike, Mom, and Dad? The radio is silent. It felt as if I had vanished from their lives. When I made my decision, Grandma disappeared, and everything changed, like a freight train. It hit me. She was my strongest ally, and my rock. I last saw my family at the funeral. When I discovered that Grandma had left me everything, including her house, garden, and some savings. Even though no one else did, she believed in me and my dream. But that's when the storm struck. My family, which was already distant, became colder. They had plans for Grandma's home, dreams of selling it to help fund the restaurant. When they learned about the will, all hell broke loose. "You cannot be serious." Dad yelled over the phone when I told them I was keeping the house and using Grandma's savings to fund my career. "That money, that house, is meant for the family and the restaurant." Mom's voice was no less fierce. "How can you be so selfish? Your grandmother would be ashamed of you, keeping everything for yourself." Even Mike, who is rarely involved, spoke up. "Come on, Eva. Do not do this to the family. We need the money." Their words stung, but I held my ground. Grandma believed in me and what I was doing. She wanted me to have the house so I could make something of myself while also honoring her wishes. Whether you like it or not. The line fell silent for a moment before Dad's voice broke through. It was colder than I had ever heard before. "If you go ahead with this, don't bother calling us family anymore. You are on your own, Eva." And with that, the decision was made for me. I lost more than Grandma that day. I lost my family. But in the midst of that loss, I discovered a resolve I didn't realize I possessed. So I dedicated myself to my work, transforming her garden into a tribute to her memory. It wasn't all about plants and designs. It was about proving to myself, and possibly to them, that I could succeed on my own. That I wasn't just a family outcast. More than simply a gardener. Years passed, thick and fast, like the seasons changing in my garden. My old but cozy grandmother's house became a slice of paradise. Friends became my new family, filling the house with laughter and warmth, particularly on our legendary barbecue nights. Then, out of the blue, a wedding invitation arrived in my mailbox. It was from my brother, Mike. A wedding at the family restaurant, where I became estranged from my former family. My heart sank slightly. Memories, both sweet and sour, bubble up. "I can't believe Mike is getting married," I mumbled to myself, flipping the invitation in my hands. That evening, my backyard was buzzing with the usual suspects, my friends grilling and relaxing. I tossed the invitation on the table as a silent announcement. You have to go, Jess said, grabbing a burnt sausage from the grill. Her words are blunt. There is no room for argument. Yeah, show him how you thrived. Sam mentioned that he liked one of your gardens. His grin is encouraging. But knowing the turmoil made me feel, I sighed, the weight of the decision pressing down on me, but I stepped back after that. It is not about them either. It is all about closure for you. And who knows, perhaps a fresh start. Jess nudged, always the optimist. Their words, a combination of wisdom and whiskey, finally reached me. Okay, I'll go for Grandma. If nothing else, I admitted. My voice was a mix of determination and dread. The following few days were a blur of preparations. I found myself in front of a mirror, putting on a dress that felt like armor. It was beautiful in a way that exuded confidence and elegance, not only to the world, but to me as well. I am doing this, I whispered to my reflection, a promise to the woman looking back. Choosing a gift for Mike was another battle. What do you give to someone who has drifted so far away? They're more like memories than brothers. In the end, I chose a rare plant, a symbol of development and resilience. Only I would acknowledge our shared history and my unwavering love of green and growing things. The family restaurant, decked out in garish decorations, felt both familiar and strange. I hoped for a new beginning, or at least some semblance of civility. My hopes were dashed the moment I saw my family. Mike saw me first. Isn't this surprising? I assumed you'd be too busy playing in the dirt to remember your only brother's wedding. He spoke loudly enough for a circle of guests to hear his wide, unwelcoming smirk. I tried to keep my voice steady. Congratulations, Mike. I wish you both the best. My attempt at diplomacy failed. His smirk turned to a sneer. Mom and Dad were next. Their expressions were a mixture of shock and disapproval. Eva, you actually arrived. I assumed you found this too mundane for your exquisite tastes. Mom spoke with sarcasm, barely concealing her disdain. Dad's eyes searched me from head to toe, his disappointment palpable. I hope you've left your garden long enough to remember how to behave at a family gathering, he added in a harsh, unforgiving tone. Then came Mike's fiancée, Clara, who looked at me as if I were a specimen rather than a person. So, you are the infamous sister? Mike stated that you would rather plant flowers than be part of the family. She refused to admit that he was wrong. Her voice was dripping with contempt. Her hand rested possessively on Mike's arm. The conversation around us paused. The guests' attention is now focused on the unfolding drama. I could feel their curious and judgmental stares, as if I were an exhibit on display. Trying to save some dignity, I replied. I just wanted to wish you both happiness, that is all. But the barbs kept coming. Make sure you don't get the place dirty. Gardner would not want the guests to think we let anyone in, Mike quipped, and the guests around him chuckled uncomfortably. I feel smaller by the second. I was directed to a table in the corner, away from family, away from any sense of belonging. The table was clearly an afterthought, with minimal decoration and an awkward position. As I took a seat, the whispers became louder, and the looks more pitying. I've heard she chose weeds over family, someone whispered near me. Imagine skipping out on real life because you preferred dirt. Another person snickered. The laughter and music grew louder, a stark contrast to the coldness in my isolated corner. I was an outsider here, surrounded by people who only knew me through the scathing stories they'd heard as the wedding dragged on, tucked away in my corner like an afterthought. The atmosphere began to shift. The night was filled with the typical wedding, fair dancing, toasts, and a little too much alcohol for some. However, amidst the revelry, an unexpected moment of redemption occurred, catching me off guard. It happened just as I was planning to make a quiet exit unnoticed. The mayor of our town, who was a guest of honor because of his ties to the bride's family, took the stage to deliver his speech. His presence was a big deal, adding prestige to the event. I'd met him a few times professionally because I worked on several city park projects, but I doubted he would remember me. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice commanding attention, the room quiet, glasses pausing in midair as everyone turned to listen as he spoke about community and the importance of coming together. His gaze suddenly fell on mine. He asked Mike and his fiancée, puzzled. Why is the famous landscape designer sitting alone, as if she has been put on timeout? Mike and Clara exchanged glances, clearly clueless. That was when the mayor pointed directly at me. You could have heard a pin drop. My family looked as if they had seen a ghost dot. The mayor called me over. We're in luck tonight, right here. We have the talent that created our city's most beautiful parks. Not to mention, she recently received $300,000 from the city for her next project. As I approached the front, applause filled the room and echoed off the walls. I took the microphone, feeling both proud and nervous. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I started. The goal is to make our city a better place, one garden at a time. Then, turning to my family, I couldn't help but include Mike. Clara, congrats. You two seem to be a great match. A light jab at their previous coolness. I said something to my parents. I hope you aren't too embarrassed by your gardener daughter right now. Their expressions were one of shock and burning shame. The room was buzzing, with whispers spreading like wildfire. I could feel a shift in the air, the guests' surprised looks and newfound respect. I returned to my table, no longer the outcast, but rather the evening's unexpected star. The mayor and several other city officials joined me. Their interest is genuine. The night took on a different flavor. Conversations centered on future projects and the sudden spotlight on me, for the first time in a long while. I did not feel like the odd one out in my family. I was either the landscape designer who forged her own path, which even the mayor admired, and as for my family, let's just say the evening left them with a lot to think about. The evening of my brother's wedding turned out to be far more than just an awkward family reunion. Surrounded by the city's elite, I found myself in deep discussion with the mayor and others about the possibility of new ambitious landscaping projects throughout the city. His enthusiasm was contagious, and for a moment, I allowed myself to dream bigger than I had before. The mayor stated that either your vision for the new park downtown is exactly what is required to revitalize that area. His eyes light up with excitement. Your ability to recognize beauty in neglected spaces is remarkable. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that every area of our city has potential. It's simply a matter of determining the best way to express it, I replied with a swell of pride. The conversations did not end there. The head of the local TV channel was intrigued by my story and suggested a feature segment. Iva, your journey from a misunderstood gardener to a celebrated landscape designer is inspirational. How do you feel about sharing your story with our audience, showing them how pursuing your passion can result in unexpected success? He suggested his camera crew, already planning the shots. I'm humbled. If my story can inspire even one person to follow their heart, it will be worthwhile, I replied. As the night progressed, the reality of my influence became clear, as did the mayor's disappointment in his niece and my family's behavior. His confrontation with Clara was a moment of vindication. I had no idea I needed Clara. I expected better. The way you and your new family have treated Eva is unacceptable. I can't in good conscience support the restaurant, financially or otherwise. Respect and kindness are values that we should all uphold. He spoke firmly, leaving Clara and my brother visibly shaken. Riding the wave of the evening's revelations, I returned home with an open mind and a light heart. Despite the undercurrents of family drama, that lightness was fleeting, as Mike's unexpected visit a week later jolted me back into reality. Eva, we are struggling. The restaurant is very deep. I wouldn't have asked if it wasn't serious. Can you help us? Mike's request was desperate, his pride overshadowed by necessity. Mike comes here and asks for money. Now, after everything. You really don't understand, do you? I built my life and career on my own, regardless of how you all treated me. No, I will not bail you out, I said, my voice steady and unwavering. Following his departure, our parents called us. Their tones were sugary and their intentions were clear. Eva, sweetheart, we have been thinking about you. How successful have you become? We're very proud. Maybe you could share some of that success, help the family business. They cooed, their words full of insincerity. You think you can ignore me and dismiss my passion. And then when I succeed, you call to ask for money. I am doing well. Thank you for finally noticing. But I will not be your safety net. Goodbye, I said. hanging up with a mix of anger and liberation. The chapter of seeking approval from those who never understood me was coming to a close. A path ahead of me was paved with potential thanks to my own accomplishments and the respect of those who truly valued my work. It is frequently stated that life has an unusual way of coming full circle. Brick by Symbolic Brick. My family's restaurant was collapsing as I was out planting roots. As it turned out, Mike and my parents' determination to maintain the opulent lifestyle and false impression of wealth were nothing more than delusions. They had not been investing in the company. Instead, they were wasting money on ostentatious gadgets and ways to flaunt their status. The restaurant eventually failed, leaving them in debt and with dashed hopes. The schism did not last long in Mike's marriage. Clara was not going to be there to witness the fall from grace. She had married him, thinking she was getting the future king of the neighborhood eating scene, but he didn't have a wife or a restaurant to call his own, simply a mountain of debt and regret. She left him to struggle in the chaos that had become his life. However, everything was blooming beautifully on my end. Orders were pouring in left and right. I was on speed dial with the mayor's office, attempting to green every inch of our community. Furthermore, private clients wished to share in the enchantment. My schedule was a whirlwind of tasks, events, and gatherings with some of the most fascinating people I'd ever met. As soon as the TV commercial aired, I was no longer just the neighborhood gardener, but a hero. Instead, I became a legend and an inspiration to anyone who dared to pursue bigger dreams. People loved it and flooded my social media accounts with encouragement, sharing their own stories of achieving their goals in the face of adversity. One day, while she was grinning and thumbing through her phone, my assistant Lucy, a bright-eyed green thumb, asked me if I had seen the comments on that post. You quote, "Re practically a celebrity now." I shook my head, laughing, all because I enjoy playing in the dirt. As always, Lucy reminded me of the big picture. "You're aware that there's more to it," she shot back. "You are encouraging people to pursue their passions. That is extremely significant." Of course she was right. What started in my grandmother's backyard has grown into something I never thought possible. And speaking of grandmother, I couldn't go a day without thinking about her. Her faith in me was evident in every plant arrangement I made and every sketch I drew of my family. Well, we were quiet for a long time. After all that, they were overly proud. Perhaps you are too ashamed to seek assistance. The same grapevine that probably told me about my victories also told me about their difficulties. I had a thought one peaceful evening as I was reviewing the plans for a new community garden. Despite the pain, distance, and divergent paths our lives had taken, they remained my family. Maybe it was time to reach out and extend an olive branch. Not because they deserved it, but because harboring resentment was like letting weeds take over a garden. After giving it some thought, I picked up the phone and dialed Mike's number. After ringing non-stop, it finally said hello, and it was even Mike, whom I had been considering. Maybe it's time for us to talk, really communicate. After 1 or 2 beats of silence, the line said, "Yeah, maybe it is." Though awkward and stilted, the conversation was a start. A seed planted in the direction of something new. I tried, so perhaps it will grow. Perhaps it won't. Meanwhile, I needed to plan. Gardens nurture dreams and leave a legacy that my grandmother would have been proud of.